Hi, everyone. My name is Hallie Marquis, and I am the Director of Strategy and Engagement for the Ohio Hotel and Lodging Association. I am a former hotelier and also a certified meeting professional, serving as a planner in some capacity for the past 7 years. So in some way, I'm like each one of you. And like our moderator today, I certainly can appreciate and understand both sides of the meeting industry. I wanted to take a moment to welcome everyone for joining us for our first ever virtual fishbowl, an experiment on a not so traditional meeting set. This is also, at least in recent history, the first time these 5 industry associations have come together to provide content to the Ohio meetings industry. Today, we bring together members and guests of the Ohio Hotel and Lodging Association, the Ohio chapter of the Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association International, the Ohio Society of Association Executives, the Ohio chapter of Meeting Professionals International, and the Power chapter of the Professional Convention Management Association. I'd also like to thank Carrie Bohr, President of HSMAI Ohio chapter, Jared Claybaugh, Executive Director, and Martha Madison, Manager of Membership and Programs for OSAE, Abby Border, President of MPI Ohio Chapter, Will Engel, President-elect and Director of Education, and Ken Seen, Director of Sponsorship, both with the PCMA Power Chapter, and of course, OHLA's Events and Communications Coordinator, Michelle Marcinek. Together, these leaders put together this outstanding program for all of you. In addition to our panelists and moderator, I'd like to thank Sam Lillard with Fisher Phillips, standing by as OHLA's legal counsel to answer or clarify any questions that arise that may need an attorney's input. Fisher Phillips is a longtime partner of OHLA and is an industry expert in labor and employment law. Sam, thanks for joining us today. I'd also like to mention that this joint virtual event is sponsored by Mac Productions. Mac Productions is a full-service audio, video, and lighting company providing audiovisual rentals and event services. They are also pioneering how we move forward with virtual and hybrid meetings. Thank you for sponsoring this virtual event. Before introducing our moderator, I'd like to cover just a few housekeeping notes. First of all donations from today's event will go to Hospitality Helping Hands, a new initiative to provide financial assistance and support to the members of the hospitality industry who have been displaced or impacted due to COVID-19. Through Hospitality Helping Hands, OHLA will deliver support to those in the most need. Hospitality Helping Hands has already provided $15,000 in financial assistance through its first round of funding due to the pandemic. You can still make donations after this event, and we will include the link in the follow-up materials. There are 3 engagement features that you can use throughout this event. Some of you have already found the polling function. We ask you to participate, and questions will be rotating throughout the presentation. The Q&A function is how you can connect with our moderator, Mike, to ask questions you'd like to see the panelists react to. Users can also interact with your question by clicking the up arrow and upvoting your question, bumping it to the front of the line. Finally, the chat feature is available so you can communicate with fellow attendees. Please note, because we have well over 150 people registered for this event, we ask that you refrain from side conversations occurring here, as neither the moderator nor the panelists can see the chat conversation. The Q&A is your best way to direct questions towards the experts. Speaking of experts, I am honored to introduce our moderator, Michael Dominguez. Michael is well known among the meetings industry for his thoughtful, honest, and uplifting insight provided to both planners and hoteliers alike. He currently serves as the president and CEO of Associated Luxury Hotels International. Prior to that, Michael was the senior vice president and chief sales officer for MGM Resorts International. Mike has served in leadership roles with Meeting Professionals International, the U.S. Travel Association, the American Society of Association Executives, and many more. He was recently named to the Events Industry Council's Hall of Leaders. Even with all of the accolades and recognition, what I've learned in working with Mike is really he is like all of us. He too wants to see our industry thrive and wants to work together to come out of this pandemic with a stronger industry made tougher and better than ever before by collaboration and teamwork. So with that, let's begin this meeting of the minds.
Haley, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody, and I actually honored to be able to moderate a conversation, and I'll be very candid. I'm going to be happy that I'm moderating and not having to be on the other end of the conversation. We've been doing a lot of that recently, but it's been a lot of good dialogue. I think we're all in the same place. I wanted to make sure we take a few minutes and introduce everybody, and wanted to have a little bit of a fun fact as we go around the horn here. And, I always think it's interesting on how, especially depending on when you came in, how we got into this business. And I started when there wasn't a lot of hospitality schools, and this wasn't necessarily thought of as that industry you're going to be in. It has advanced greatly, and I'm excited about that. But I can candidly say I started in this business by accident, bussing tables at a Hyatt hotel, and spent about 9 years in food and beverage. But it got me hooked, and it's something I've never left. And candidly, it's probably been the greatest blessing of my life outside my family. So with that, let's introduce our panel, and then we can talk a little bit about the environment and really get into some discussion here. But I'll start with John Page, General Manager of ASMM Global, Columbus Convention Center. John, please tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started in this?
Well, thanks, Michael. I've been in the hospitality convention space for 22 years, specific. But if I go back and to how I got started, that takes me back to 33 years, which gives away my age, I guess, a little bit as well. So I started this business at 14 years old. Got a job at my local arena there, and since then I've been either working in arenas, stadiums, convention centers, or recreation centers. So never had a paper route, never worked in fast food, worked in a grocery store. It's been only venue management, and specifically for conventions the last 22 years.
John, I think you and I broke some labor laws because I started at 15. I don't know how the heck I was able to do that, but you beat me. I have never had anybody younger. That's awesome.
Yeah,
welcome,
let's see, I got paid in cash underneath the table, Michael. So yeah, we broke a few laws along the way.
I guess I should add, I actually worked with a gentleman that had a milk route and delivered to all the businesses, and I got paid breakfast every morning. That's what I got paid. Breakfast and lunch each day. That was about it. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Let's go to Will Engel, Director of Conference and Events for AMR Management Services. Will?
Hey, Mike. How are you doing?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. Like you, I got into this business unexpectedly. I thought I was going to be general manager of the Chicago Cubs one day and help break their curse. Obviously, they did that without my help. But yeah, so I thought I was getting into sports, and I've been doing events for over 20 years, some sporting events. Now I'm on this side of it. And like you said, it's been a blessing and been loving every minute of it.
Thanks for being with us, sir. And that's actually a pretty cool dream. I like that. I always go back to President Bush. His dream was to be the commissioner of baseball, never to be president of the U.S. So you've got that in common with him. It's good. Let's go to Tom Corcoran, owner, Corcoran Expositions, Inc.
Hi, it's Tom Corcoran.
Oh, Corcoran. Sorry, Tom.
No problem. From Chicago, we have a company that works with a lot of nonprofit associations on their trade shows. Right now, we're living in a little bit of a virtual world. The way I got into trade shows, I needed one more course to finish up business school. I was taking it at night and got a job off the job board at McCormick Place, and that was in 1975. So this year, I did my 1,000th trade show, which probably makes me the friggin' Methuselah of this panel. But I'm real glad to be here.
You have a lot of people Googling that word right now, but that's awesome.
Go for it.
Well done. I understand we have Dan back, so we're going to go back to Dan Williams. We'll try this again with Experience Columbus.
Can you guys hear me now? All right.
We can hear you, Dan.
Good afternoon, Michael. And as Michael said, I'm Dan Williams, Vice President of Sales and Service with Experience Columbus. I got into this industry kind of probably like the majority of the panel, kind of tripped into it a little bit. I worked for PepsiCo for a number of years and kind of wanted to do something different and noticed this building across the street called PlanSoft and ventured in, and you know, I fell in love with the industry. Didn't even know how to cut on a computer at that time, and just got exposed to the hospitality industry through the tech side. So as most of you know, PlanSoft is a spinoff of Confron, and then jumped into bureaus, and now here I am, and absolutely, positively loving the industry. So.
I love it. I love the enthusiasm, and I always say, you know, bureau people are always that way. I love it. You guys love the city and love the industry. Just a lot of passion. But thanks for being with us. Todd, we're going to go to Todd Bowen, Managing Director of Member Growth and Government Affairs with the Ohio Restaurant Association.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. You know, I guess my first restaurant experience, I was an ice cream dipper and grill cook and everything else that needed done. And the same, I was 14 years old at the small local deli and ice cream shop in the small town I grew up in. And then I had a long career in the political world, and thus my government affairs role here at the Ohio Restaurant Association. And really in that role, I did many things, but also did the fundraising, and therefore from an event world, kind of was the planner and executor of a lot of events. So I've seen events from that side. And now that I've been at the Ohio Restaurant Association 2 years, and just, you know, really fighting every day for the restaurant, food service, and all of the affiliated industries to make it through this and kind of come back and be strong on the other side.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I love another young start, and thank you for the fight you're putting up right now. Probably no more important fight than how our restaurant community specifically and the hotel community has been impacted here. So thank you for all the hard work in advance. Rebecca Gorman. Let's go to Rebecca, Director of Sales and Marketing at the Crown Plaza, Columbus, downtown.
Hi, good afternoon, Michael. I started in high school myself. I actually worked at a full-service hotel that I did some banquet serving and worked in a restaurant, and just really liked the service aspect and working with people directly. And that led me to go into hospitality management in college. And I've been with the industry most of the time since then, but I switched over to sales probably about 10 years later. So been on the sales side ever since.
Well, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to have lots to talk about shortly, for sure. And then now we're going to go to our lone planner on this group call, and it's Nicole Iovine. She's with Senior Corporate Event Manager and Corporate One Federal Credit Union. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here today. I went to school for chemistry and microbiology, and couldn't find a job, so 17 years in the industry now, falling into it like most everybody else.
Wow. Chemistry and microbiology. I think you could put that to use in today's world right now. Very appropriate for our
I'm understanding a little more about all this.
Well, thanks for joining us. And, you know, I was just going to start with a high-level overview. I don't want to go through, you know, basically the last 90 days. I think it's important for us to look at how we're moving forward. And that seems to be the discussion we're hearing from the planner community consistently. Is the questions are, what are we doing as a hospitality and event industry to be prepared to move forward with some of these meetings? And, you know, high view, I will tell you, or a high arching view, there are meetings happening between now and the end of the year, and there's quite a few. And, you know, it's encouraging when I keep getting off calls. We were on one this morning where one of our member hotels, they have a meeting for 202 weeks and a meeting for 704 weeks in their hotels. And, that's not widely broadcast. There's these pockets in our hospitality community that in a meetings and events community specifically that they almost seem like meetings are not happening. And that's not the case. But what we are hearing consistently, and I think it needs to be part of this conversation, is how are we going to meet moving forward? And what preparations have you done or have you had in your businesses moving forward, and what does that look like? I think this will be a great dialogue, and we'll talk about some high arching views of what you're doing. But I actually would like to start with Nicole from a planner perspective. I would love to know what is the conversation around your world with your stakeholders, as far as events. And if you could, and I think it's important for everyone in this conversation, let's break the conversation between the end of 2020 and then long term, because we think there's a little bit of two different worlds, or short term in the post-COVID, and then long term past COVID. So what does that look like, Nicole, and what are the conversations being had in your community specifically?
Yes, I can speak for what we're doing right now. I do have a pretty full fall schedule on the books right now. So I actually just met with legal and our risk departments to say how I can do some of my smaller events successfully, still engaging, still meeting objectives, what we're trying to accomplish, and kind of laying out how I'm going to do that. So getting legal's buy-off on what risk of liabilities I'm going to do, what I'm going to check with my vendors with, how I'm going to set up the event physically in Florida, in Ohio, and Indiana, because this is a multi-state program, and I have to be familiar with all of those state regulations. And I actually got their sign-off on it, and it is now with my senior leadership team to approve it, so I can do these events in August and September. One of my conferences in November has switched to virtual, and I'm working on that. But I do have a program in New Orleans in Q1, and I have a call with them tomorrow to kind of advise them on what I think could happen, and could we do this as a hybrid where maybe it's a smaller group to mitigate risk and allow still everyone participating. So keeping all options open. Yeah. And just talking through it, having very candid and transparent conversations with them. The biggest problem you're having right now is travel bans.
I'm sorry, biggest problem you're having now is what?
Travel bans. None of us are allowed to travel. I need that to open up, because I don't trust having a local person in the market do my job.
I do get that. It's one of the things we're talking about, even with business travel being restricted by corporations, and then you have government restricting travel, and it's making things a little complex, because you have to really be aware of where you're going and knowing that regulation could change by the time you go. I get it, and that is probably the one thing we've heard more and more from the community is, where do we get all the information? There's just so much out there, and it's this moving piece. But you're saying things that we've heard consistently in conversation. But with that, Dan, I want to go your way, because being at a bureau, I'm sure you're getting a lot of questions and comments from planners as well in that planner community. What are you hearing? What are the most common questions that are coming your way?
So Michael, I mean, kind of in line with what she was stating, is that, I mean, it's going to come down to cleanliness and safety. We have to make sure that our community, if people come here, that they know that things are going to be cleaned properly to the CDC standards, and that they're going to be safe, and their people are going to be able to meet. We've been meeting with our customer advisory council, which is comprised of anywhere from 24 to 30 planners, and communication, understanding the changes that are going on in destination, defining what the mass gatherings could be, making sure that you have that all your facilities are working with the social distancing guidelines. It's just that is at the forefront of everything, making sure that your destination is clean and safe. And I'm sure, John will touch on that a little more also. I mean, what we're doing here is we were one of the first city, actually, we were the second city to get the GBAC Star accreditation for a destination, and that's the Global Biohazard Biorisk Advisory Council. And that's important to have like that third party stamp of endorsement that, okay, it's not just Columbus saying we're a clean destination, it is ISSA and GBAC. And, so just doing those types of things and making sure that the planner community understands that.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually, you just teed it up perfectly, because I was going to go to John to say, John, there's a lot of prep work that has to go in. And I know what convention centers have been having to go through, as well as facilities. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what has been the focus, what have you been looking at, and what have you been implementing, getting ready for people to start coming back here.
Thanks, Michael. If I take it further from Dan, it becomes about the cleanliness and safety moving forward. I mean, that has to be, paramount. And as we've looked at it specifically here in Columbus and the larger company I'm part of, ASM Global, the things that we put in place really are going to define the customer journey as we move forward into the future. Everything that we're looking at is not short-term in nature, but it's about the evolving nature of where our industry is going, kind of post-COVID. So we have an initiative called Venue Shield. Here, and again, I won't speak in large terms about Venue Shield. I mean, obviously the hotel brands and many others have their own specific piece, but for Venue Shield, we partnered with the CDC and the National Institute of Health and the Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Homeland Security to make sure we got it right. And ASM Global is a firm that is on 5 continents, with our facilities representing some 350, kind of facilities, convention centers, arenas, stadiums, theaters of the like. So again, the things that we look in place are not just Columbus specific, but international as far as the approach and how our industry will be defined moving forward. We've broken it down with our Venue Shield program into 6 specific principles: environmental hygiene and making sure we're delivering the highest in cleaning and sanitation, food service, providing safe and enjoyable food experiences as you move forward, the customer journey, understanding which begins really as you arrive to the city and the points in between getting to the convention center, how we're bringing you in, how we're getting you out, and then the time period that you spend in the convention in the city proper. Our own staff, that talent and workforce, and making sure they're properly trained and equipped and educating them about how we're operating in the new norm. The technology and equipment, which is going to be a huge piece, and the devices and enhancements that are going to be part of our industry moving forward. And finally, a public awareness. How do we effectively communicate everything that we're doing, not just to the meeting planner and kind of that group body as a whole, but throughout the various forms of kind of media and otherwise, to be able to communicate out this messaging.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And, I love that you talked about the entire journey because that's something that is often missed. But I know as destinations, the destinations are doing a large or have a large effort in this. And I know, and when I say it's often missed in conversation, not in the work being done. But I think that's an important one. Yeah. I'm going to throw that, trying to keep in line with this thinking. I'd love to go to Rebecca, because now you're talking about the convention center. How does all that, what we were just hearing, flow into a hotel and what you're doing? Because we understand a lot of it's similar, but now you have a guest room product that you're having to think a little bit differently about, and check-in, check-out, things that we've done the same way for 40 years. What have you been going through over the last few weeks getting ready for this?
Well, absolutely. A lot of what Dan and John said, definitely doing a lot of those things. From a hotel perspective, the guest rooms that we have and what do we do to service that has been a big change. A large part is the cleanliness. How do we have our housekeeping team approach that? How does our front desk welcome people and check them in? Obviously, we want to comply with the CDC as well as what the state of Ohio would like us to do. The signage, making sure we're communicating what that is, just for our staff as well as those that are coming into our hotel. I'm happy to say today is our first day in over 90 days. We actually have an in-house meeting that started a 3-day meeting today. And it was such a delight for our staff to welcome back. It was 9 people, but boy, these 9 people are making, quite an excitement for our staff today. But in addition to all of the cleanliness and how are we handling that, I think from a hotel standpoint is when people want to book, whether it's just a single hotel reservation or booking a meeting sometime during the rest of 2020, that they could do it with confidence, because it's an ever-changing situation. It could be fine this month, and by August or September, we're back in wave 2. So we want them to feel like they can book, and if it can continue to hold, then they can absolutely go through with their plans. But if things change or shift, that they can cancel, and it's going to be an easy way for them to postpone it, hopefully to later in 2021. So I think that's been the biggest component from a hotel standpoint, to make them just feel like they can make these plans in confidence.
That's thank you. I think it's interesting on how comprehensive the view has been for the industry, and it's sometimes I hear from the planner community there's a little frustration that they're not getting the information fast enough, and I always remind them that it was kind of hard when, unfortunately, we were furloughing people. We had hotels that were shut down across the country. It was a time frame that we were trying to hang on and manage our businesses at the same time of, on a dime, we had to pivot to think about how we move forward. So that everything you've talked about, I think, has been a lot of work in a very short period of time, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. And I think each market's going to rebound different. So how Columbus versus, say, Cleveland or Cincinnati, or even in other bigger cities, it's all going to be dependent on what's going on locally. We had to pivot for this meeting today with the skeleton crew of, we may have 10 people in our hotel at any given time right now. And unfortunately, we're still going to be pretty light on staff for the time being, because Columbus as a destination, as much as we're doing all these great and wonderful things, we're not quite ready to welcome back the big events in our state. So it's going to be a process for us to get back up to fully staffed.
Yeah, I really do think part of it's visible. People are going to need to see other meetings of mass size happening, and that will help things move forward. And I really do think that that's coming, by the way. We do see it in our industry, and we see some opportunities. And like I said it the other day, and I said, take all the political nonsense out of the equation, but having 6,500 people in an arena for a rally last weekend, we should all be pulling for the fact that we don't see a spike in cases with that coming together, regardless of what else happens. It was a large gathering of people that had come together in one shot.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I think this might help interject or layer on what you're talking about. We're Fisher Phillips, we're a national law firm, we're labor and employment. Really what we've been doing is, unfortunately, at the beginning, helping our hospitality clients, dealing with furloughs and shutdowns. Then we've helped them bring their staff back, comply with the regulations. But we've also been working with gyms, events, racetracks, casinos. What we found is that anybody who wants to do something, as long as they work to try to follow the CDC guidelines and the executive orders with their states, which are not that complicated, we are seeing great cooperation from all the various states to helping them make that happen. In fact, of all the events, restaurants, some pretty neat stuff, including, Mid-Ohio is having a race this weekend. We've not seen one event that was told no. And so if you have the will, the creativity, and willing to plow through the rules, you can hold your event, you can hold your, open your business. That's all there. The only thing that, of course, that's the limiting is the customers and the patrons.
Yeah, that is definitely, we see that is definitely part of the equation when it's all said and done. And I love what you're saying, because I do think it is making sure that we are having those dialogues and working with our local and federal officials where necessary to make sure we can make these things happen. I actually made the comment there was a thing going around, and I think you teed this up perfectly. But on LinkedIn, there was this piece going around of there was a planner that had posted different armbands to wear: green, red, yellow, and yellow was I'm okay high-fiving. Red was no, I need to keep my distance. Green is I'm okay with hugs and handshakes. It was interesting because there was this drumbeat of, oh, wow, what a cool idea. And I go, no, it's a horrible idea, because we're moving forward talking about physical distancing, creating safe environments. We need to make sure that people, and I always say there's a shared responsibility here. The people that attend our meetings have to be able to adhere to these safe environments you've put together for them and reducing risk. And I think that's an interesting one. I just don't know if I'd love to hear some commentary on that, but I shared with my team today, like, that's not where we want to go. Because right now in the short term, we have to make sure that, to your point, we're abiding and working with the regulations that we need to make these things happen.
Well, the regulations aren't that hard. They just want you to take in consideration spacing, capacity, sanitation, air circulation, temperature testing, masks, and no sharing items. And if you come up with a plan, they're usually very accommodable. And the they I'm talking about are the government officials. They're concerned about those entities that have basically decided to disregard all that. So, and again, most of us, I think, are pretty comfortable in creating small events of 10 to make that a larger event. You just multiply what you were doing for smaller groups and then create the distancing. It's a good time to do things outside because that's usually preferred. But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, if you want to do it, I just want to give a very optimistic perspective. If you want to do events, you want to do things, if you want to travel, there are many ways you can get that done. Those rules are very flexible. They're not draconian. And it's time to be creative and get this stuff going. We can do, I think our governor of Ohio, and this I think is correct, he said it's not as important when we open or why we open, but how we do it. And, if you're willing to take these things serious, try to keep people safe, we need to make that happen.
I couldn't agree more. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, but I agree with what you're saying. But to Mike's point, it's we got to put the things in place and expect our folks to comply with that, because the worst thing that could happen, or one of the worst things that could happen, is we going back to what you said, the how of it, right? We open up and we get a little relaxed because the rules may not be draconian, and we may have some flexibility in the rules, but maybe it's more of a matter of what we should do, right? As opposed to what's being allowed to do. And one of the worst things that could happen is we see a huge spike because we made the choice to move too forward too quickly. I like the wristband idea. I saw that as well, and I thought it was very creative, and I love how our industry continually comes up with creative ideas and ways to try to come at problems. But I think at this point, it may just be a little too soon.
Yeah, and that was my only point. I actually told our team that's a great idea. 90 days, maybe 120 days from now, when some of the environment changes a bit. But right now, to meet, and I agree with what was just said, it's not that hard to keep social distancing. It's not that hard for sanitation. It's not that hard for making sure we're keeping our hands clean. Those pieces are not that, and that's what I mean. I'm hearing when the regulations aren't that tough. It's really putting the thought process in to make sure we're creating these environments that are taking density and geometry and transmission barriers into account. So I do see that in the meetings moving forward so far.
Michael, we got a question on the board, and the question was, are planning event providers requiring their patrons to sign liability waivers? And we have been getting some of those questions. My personal position is not unless you're doing something unusual. Liability waivers are basically indicating to the patron that you're assuming the risk of attending an event And in that context, it's assuming the risk of contracting COVID. You can't make that risk zero in this environment, and I think most people understand that. I would rather have the event planners focus on just having appropriate protocols that are in place to keep people safe. That's the best way to avoid liability. And so I'm not a big fan of liability waivers. It doesn't necessarily work in a lot of legal jurisdictions. It can in some, depending on your event. So that would be my answer to that question.
I saw that question come through. We're going to get to some of these others in just a sec, but you're correct on the liability side, and we've had legal experts chime in, and they're literally useless in this situation. There is an assumed duty of care when people are coming to a hotel or coming to a venue. It's just implied. But to your point, you can't get rid of the risk completely. All we can do is make the environments a little bit safer. And it's been highly recommended that it literally puts a red flag up to people that they should be worried about something more than what they should be worried about. And it's the thought process of in a high flu season, you're running a risk. In any type of outbreak, you're running those type of risks, but there's an implied inherent risk that's always there. So well said. I'd love to go to Tom. The exposition world is one that there's a lot of discussion on. Expositions were built for density, and we're having to remove density. So it's very, very much something you've had to rethink. So can you give us a little bit of an idea of what your thoughts are moving forward and what the exhibit world's going to look like coming out of this?
Sure. Well, basically, just like everybody else, the first thing, it's going to be about safety, social distancing. We've got 3 groups that are in the 4th quarter that are still moving forward. And when we're working with their floor plans, it's just about spreading everything out. Some of the main aisles might be 20 foot wide. And again, if you're a facility listening, you might need to help us because most facilities, the ports kind of line up every 30, but we want to spread it out to give people room. Instead of 3 foot high drape between 10 by 10 booths, we'll put an 8 foot high drape just like on the back, so there's plenty of room. If we have 2 rows of 10 by 10s, we're probably going to put 5 or 6 feet, a double back wall in between. Again, more room. Temperature checks at the front door. Plenty of places where we have 20 foot cross aisles so we can set up sanitation stations. Anything that we can do to make people feel safe and comfortable. And basically, we're going to have to do a lot to help people build the confidence to come back and travel a floor. A couple more things that might happen. If it's a larger crowd, we may stagger the times on the exhibit floor. So instead of having everybody show up at once, it might be like back in the day we're in high school where you have 3 different times for lunch, so that we can break it up a little bit. But your creativity is there. When you think about exhibitors, I don't think any exhibitor is going to ding anybody for aisles that look a little uncrowded. Last year, if we did a show and we couldn't provide real strong aisle density, it might hurt us the following year. This time they might all be writing letters, what a heck of a job we did. So there's a little bit of work, but the trade show industry, boy, we are dying to come back, and everybody's working together. All the contractors, the exhibit hall, all the organizers, all the exhibitors, and we're really just waiting for the opportunity to go. But it's going to be a little slow out of the gate.
Understand. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work, and it's a little bit of a twist of what we normally do in this environment, but I'm encouraged. I've seen it. I've seen same commentary that you're mentioning, and I think our exhibitions world combined with our convention center world, they've done a really good job of getting prepared for this, to get running once we can run.
Yeah, you know what? It would be a very fun challenge to get to do it about 10 or 20 times in a row. And there's so many of us that have been on the beach for a few months. No one's used to it. I think everybody would be up for the challenge of spreading things out and making it safe and making sure everybody got everything they needed, you know, and send everybody home feeling good. And that's what we're going to do.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I want to let you know the legislation and legality and liability has been a big conversation. Todd, I'd love to just see what you might know or what you have heard. Specifically, I know the restaurants are a part of this, but there is a lot of talk about some type of liability coverage in the next piece of legislation that should come out in July or early August through Washington. And just wanted to know, I'm sure the Restaurant Association is somewhere in this, or at least has a voice in this, and curious on your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I would echo, you know, some of the things that Will and Sam said in terms of, you know, if you want to do events, if you want to go out to restaurants, if you want to be involved in helping our economy reopen, the rules actually do allow this to happen. But consumer confidence is a huge part of that. And certainly that's something we've pivoted toward with the Restaurant Association through our Ohio Restaurant Promise, is really promoting that consumer confidence. Specifically on that liability question, you mentioned federal legislation, and would there be some liability relief in the next coronavirus relief? And certainly we are pushing hard for that. That is certainly one that has become very political. You know, generally speaking, Republicans are for that being a centerpiece of a piece of legislation, and more of the Democrats are not. However, we're also working very hard on two pieces of legislation at the Ohio State House, and there it seems for some reason to be a little less partisan. There seems to be some bipartisan agreement that we should get some liability relief legislation done. There is just really on how it will work. And in fact, the reason I've got my suit on today, as important as this panel is, wasn't just for this panel. I was actually at the State House testifying on House Bill 606, which is one of those vehicles that is currently going through the Ohio House. And really all that it says is that if from a general immunity perspective, is that if businesses are in general doing what they can and ought to do, that you know, we're not responsible for coronavirus. We've never been responsible as businesses for kind of airborne viruses and their potential spreading. So this would simply codify that. Now, certainly still, if a business is operating in just a, you know, a willful misconduct way, they can still be held liable, but it just increases that bar. And I think that really is very important for restaurants to feel more comfortable, for the event spaces to feel more comfortable, and we'll fight hard for that.
Oh, that is great news. And, you know, I think like most of things through this pandemic, I think the states will lead in a lot of different ways and can kind of set the course. So I'm glad to hear that Ohio's doing that. That is outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think somebody mentioned, you know, the governor's rules that they put in place for businesses to operate here in Ohio. And I think they did do a good job here of having industry groups involved in all of those conversations so that the rules make sense and are actually things that can make a difference in the spread of a virus, as opposed to in some states they just kind of picked a number out of the air and said that's the capacity limit, whereas Ohio said you have to do social distancing or physical barriers, you figure out how to do it, and then work with your local health department to make sure that's true. And something I would certainly emphasize to everyone here, that having a good relationship with your local health department. Restaurants have always had to do that, but I think event folks, you know, they can always come in and look at what you're doing. So having that relationship matters a lot right now.
Yeah,
Todd,
and I appreciate that.
Todd, if I could add to that, you know, we do a lot of 50-state policies for companies on getting back to business and holding events. A couple of the states we often use as a template. And this is pretty well known. Ohio is one of them. I think Ohio has done probably one of the best jobs in the country of having very comprehensive, pragmatic return to business policies. And so we often use that as the core, and then keep an eye on California and Michigan a little bit. But I hope that legislation passes. Also, if you're interested, our law firm has a 50-state chart that's on our website that shows the litigation of COVID in each of the state, and you can choose your state and break down. Ohio has currently about 12 pending cases on this issue, and it is a drag on our concern for our clients on reopening. And so we really would hope that immunity law would be passed. Good luck.
Thank you.
Without a doubt. We're going to go to some of the questions. We have some questions in the queue here, and there's been a lot of conversation, and I'm curious to for anyone who wants to take this. But one of the questions are how are planners preparing for an anticipated second wave in the fall? My only caveat to that, we've also heard from Dr. Fauci recently that the second wave is not inevitable. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be here, but we could have one. And the big concern is we could have a second wave at the same time that we're in a regular flu season. That would be the biggest concern from the medical side of it. But I guess the question is to the group, is anybody having those conversations, thinking of that preparation any differently? And have you heard that from customers?
I can touch on that, Michael. We've definitely heard that conversation from customers. I mean, there is, and once again, my man John, he knows a lot of this, and Rebecca, they know we've had a lot of cancellations in the destination. And I mean, people are very concerned about that second wave. A lot of people are looking at 2021. And they are either rebooking their group for 2021 or shifting to a future date. But the end of this year is definitely a huge concern for a lot of these planners. I mean, once again, we get with our customer advisory council every other week, and they are very much concerned about that. So it's we're trying to do our best to make sure that, once again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, we're providing as much information and communicating as often as possible. Any changes that are happening in the state, once again, we welcome all that data, and we provide as much data as possible, but it's definitely a concern.
Yeah, Nicole, I saw you raise your hand. Something to add on this topic? You're on mute, Nicole.
You think I get used to this by now, being on so many Zoom meetings. We're doing a lot of things, and transparency and communications to our attendees, saying, we're going to follow all the rules, and if we see a spike happening, we're canceling this event. But with our partners, it's all in the contracts and asking for those loose attritions and lower blocks, and hoping to be in a partnership. So being positive and transparent up front to see what we can do from a liability standpoint from the business, but also with our attendees, letting them know this is what we're going to try to do, but we will act accordingly to what happens.
Thank you. There's a question, and I guess I'm going to throw this to both Rebecca. I think Rebecca would probably be best for this, and maybe Dan, but the questions are companies and associations bookings or rescheduling inside of 2020? Have you seen that?
From the hotel perspective, the smaller groups, yes, they've been trying to shift to Q3 and Q4, trying to make it happen this year. Some of them have said, though, we're just skipping 2020. We're back on an annual basis anyway. We'll just see you next year. So it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. The larger groups, it's been hard for them to push even to stay within the same year. And sometimes, and Dan can speak to this a little bit, but if it's a bigger group that it affects more than just, say, our hotel, but it's in multiple hotels or even the convention center, it depends sometimes on their rotation schedule with where they are already booked for future years and how they're handling that. Are they pushing everybody back, or they're just putting us at the end of the line and, we'll be up with their next event date? So it's kind of shifted around a little bit.
And I don't want to repeat everything that Rebecca said because she's right on point with it, exactly what's going on in the destination. But we're seeing a lot of transition to virtual. And, you know, they still want to hold their meeting. They still need to have their meeting. They're looking at different pay models and things like that because they have to hold their meeting this year. But we're seeing a lot of shift to the virtual opportunities. But yes, they have also tried to, as Rebecca said, push the third and fourth quarter of this year. And I mean, there's still some uncertainty there also.
Yeah, I can tell you. Oh, please go ahead.
You know, we're a lawyer, a law firm in a 50 state, whether it's Denver, Louisiana, Alabama, Texas, New York. We are getting asked, you know, 3 questions. Can we do it? How do we do it? And then they ask us, will they show up? And in all the events that we've been seeing across the country, they show up. If you can demonstrate that you are taking it seriously and then you show everybody you're taking it seriously, we are seeing overwhelming response. There is a huge pent-up demand for about everything, whether it's a racetrack, a sporting event, a business event. If you do it, they're showing up. And I was very surprised by it. We don't give advice on will they show up, but almost every event that we've been involved in, there's a pent-up demand that's aching for it. So if you have the time to set it up, I think you're going to have not a problem with getting things to happen and, again, to generate the revenue again. So I encourage you to think about that.
Yeah, and I completely concur, and I can tell you the national data we're seeing supports that. There's a lot of meetings happening between now and the end of the year, smaller in nature. And when I say smaller, it's 500 and less as far as the ones trying to be planned right now. But to your point, I can tell you of a particular property we have in our membership. They have a 500-person meeting coming up in 3 weeks. And the moment they opened up registration, 400 of the 500 were registered. And they're now over the 500 anticipated registration. So they're coming. They just had to open it up. And once they came.
I would say we are seeing some businesses that are failing economically. But I tell you, when you dig into it, especially if we're involved in it, we see they failed because they didn't try.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, we're seeing a lot of meetings, and that answers the question. I know we see North Star in their last survey actually showed, and they've been consistently monitoring this month or week by week, and they still have out of 1,200 planners, there's about 500 of that planning community they're expecting to have meetings between September and December still. So it's a lot of meetings we're seeing, a lot of incentive programs, by the way, that are still happening between now and the end of the year. And incentive programs are a little bit easier because they don't have all the meeting aspects that traditional meetings have. So even in fitting in social distancing guidelines, it becomes even a little simpler. But we're seeing a lot of that nationally. I can add to the conversation to add some confidence that things are moving forward for those that want to meet. And couldn't agree more. The question we're getting is, how do we do it? We want to do it, but we need you to tell us how so that we can make this happen. There's a question about, and you know, Dan, you kind of touched on this. It was about virtual, and we think hybrid is here to stay for at least the near future. Not pure virtual. We're seeing a lot of people saying, I'm going to meet face to face, but I'm going to have a virtual option as well. And anybody wants to add anything to it, I think that's pretty conclusive in that regard. The hybrid's going to be around, and it's also not new. Your largest events always had a great hybrid option in addition to the face-to-face. I think a lot of the people that were either afraid to do it or didn't have the time to do it now have taken care of both of those. They're no longer afraid, and they've actually had the time to understand it and learn it, to understand how that goes in. Nicole, I see you shaking your head. Anything on the hybrid piece there?
Yeah, definitely. I'm recommending hybrid for all of my in-persons for next year and actively talking with companies now about how to do it and understand the technology behind it so that when I go to get speakers, they also understand what I'm going to be expecting out of them and what they're going to need to do to help create that engagement with our virtual and our in-person since most of our people are from financial institutions, it's important to keep them engaged because they very much want to be together.
Tom, I'd be interested in the exhibit world or in the exhibition world. Are you looking at those type of options as well? I mean, I've seen virtual exhibits in a pure virtual meeting. What does that look like from a hybrid standpoint?
Well, that actually has been our pivot move. We're working on 11 different platforms right now. And all the shows that were supposed to happen in the second and third quarter that weren't able to get fourth quarter dates are happening right now. And, you know, so when we look at it in terms of trying to make it work for companies that exhibit, you know, we're looking for matchmaking elements so that you can put products and services together with buyers, just like walking an aisle. We're looking for the ability for exhibitors to put a video up so they can go in a little bit of depth of what the product and service is. Meeting planners, you know, they're looking to get their best speakers up. It's going to look a little bit different than a show. And just looking forward into 2021, any show that we're just doing virtual this year is going to be a hybrid next year because we think it's going to be a little bit a while before everybody's confident to just all show up, and no one wants to lose any audience, and everybody has an opportunity to build audience, especially if you can make them free. You know, if the group can afford to let people, all the attendees come on and be a part of it, no charge, you've got a real opportunity to build for the future.
That's outstanding. I mean, it's pretty consistent on what we're hearing, that I think there's going to be a lucrative hybrid model that's actually going to help support some of the face-to-face down the road because there is a way to monetize that as you move forward and still move the face-to-face.
So yeah, so I want to piggyback on that, Michael. You know, as we're an association management company, and so we have 20 plus association clients, and you know, you mentioned we now no longer have the excuse that we're not scared or we don't have the time. We have the time. I'm still terrified a little bit, I'll be honest, of some of these virtual events because it's a whole new thing, right? But I'll say this in the spirit of, you know, of looking forward. The more we dive into virtual events at our, and we've got, you know, multiple clients looking at it. We've got one starting this weekend. The more I'm encouraged how face-to-face meetings are going to come back because there are just some things in a virtual environment that you cannot replicate. You know, there's some things about a face-to-face that you just can't replicate in a virtual environment. And so, you know, as much as we try to force a networking event or something like that, and there's a lot of great creative ideas out there, but I can't wait for face-to-face to come back because, you know, I think it's going to come back strong. And, you know, virtual is good. And it's always kind of been this thing that's been out there and people are worried about, well, will this take away the face-to-face going forward? Or will this hurt the face-to-face going forward? But I think it's just going to strengthen it, really. There will be the hybrid and you know, and especially in the near term. But I think face-to-face is just going to be strengthened.
Yeah, you know, I couldn't agree more. I always say it's it helps you for those that are suffering from FOMO. You want to be there when you get to see it virtually. You want to be there and be part of the experience. So I do think it's going to help. It becomes a great marketing tool. But I appreciate that. Great insight. There's a question here about fall sports. And what you might have heard, and maybe this is a Dan question, or maybe John that you might know from your community and what you've heard. But what are you hearing about fall sports, whether it's college, pro, what that might look like? Have you heard anything from the city?
Go ahead, Dan, and I'll answer it.
You're on mute.
Or maybe I'll go.
My apologies. Sorry about that. So I'll say that sports has been a lot more optimistic from their standpoint than the meetings and conventions. I know John will talk about an event at his building, but we just heard about some of the baseball tournaments that are going to be happening in our community. We were one of the cities being discussed as it relates to NHL. So, yeah, we're hearing some good things about the sports. And once again, with the majority of them being outside and practicing social distancing, that's going to be good for the destination as a whole. College sports, that could be a little bit different. It'll look a little bit different, especially from the football side. I mean, our stadium seats 106,000, and you probably only be able to put 20 to 30 in that stadium. So that could definitely be interesting.
And Michael, I'll just quickly concur with Dan. Yeah, I'll just quickly concur. I mean, there's definitely optimism on the sports side, here in Columbus, and I would say throughout the state. And in the event that Dan is referencing, we're hosting here in partnership with our arena, Nationwide Arena, and called the basketball tournament, TBT, an event of college alumni that's taken place for several years. It's been several sites, prior to this year with the tournament, but similar to what Major League Baseball and the NBA and the NHL are looking at, it's one location to allow for the quarantine with this event. So the practices at the convention center, the games will be played at the arena, and that the teams will all be housed at our Hyatt Regency here downtown in Columbus to allow for that quarantine to take place. It's an event with no fans, however, but it will be produced for television through ESPN, so it'll be viewed.
That is outstanding.
I'm excited about that, both as a fan and then as a test to kind of see how this goes. I think it's exciting that Columbus got this and looking forward to it. Appreciate you guys being a part of that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, that is outstanding news, and the test is very right. I'm going to backtrack on one thing because I realized when we were doing the intros, on my intro sheet, I'm missing Sam. So unfortunately, we didn't get to ask where you started in the business. And my apologies, Sam, you're not on my intro sheet, but I know we're having the conversation, but I'm rewinding here very quickly to just, if you could let everybody know where you started. And I know we now know you're in the legal side of it, but my apologies because you're not on the intro list.
Yeah, I'll be quick then. I'm a partner at Fisher Phillips. We're a national labor and employment firm for management only. I've been a prosecutor in Warren County, Ohio, an assistant attorney general for the state of Ohio. I've been practicing in private practice, so I hate to say it, 32 years. And I've considered myself a hospitality lawyer. Started working with OHLA and the Hilton at Easton in 2000. And I tell you what, I've learned a lot from hospitality. They've taught me a lot of very good practices and ways of serving individuals that I carry on to my practice. I also own a gym, and I'm a professional, a competitive fencer.
Oh, wow. That is actually a great tidbit to learn about you. Now, the gym, great thought process, because I know this ties into even the hotel side of it. Thought processes on opening a gym and what that looked like, reopening a gym through this this post-COVID-19. What did that look like, and any big ahas or learnings out of that?
Well, the tricky thing for Jim, here's how I think best to review any event, whether it's a gym, a restaurant, event. We've been part of discussions that are just very creative, including doing large sporting events that kind of spread out the audience to restaurants and hotels, which I think is a great economic idea. So I'm seeing a lot of really good plans from different people. For our gym, first we just created the signage about who can come into the gym, what criteria has to happen. We did testing. Everybody's going to wear masks. We're going to create the 6-foot spacing. But the thing that I think most people should think about when they're doing these events, there are 3 numbers they always should keep in their head: 48, 15, and 6. Those are the 3 numbers: 48, 15, and 6. So what happens is, if in a bad event that someone in the event or your workspace contracts COVID, the CDC will ask, or wants you to ask the individual, who did they come in contact 48 hours prior to onset of symptoms that they were within 6 feet for more than, it's 15, but it's kind of now 10 minutes. So if you think about that, and then when that individual who is tested positive for COVID gives you that list of individuals, then they'll be asked to go home and quarantine for 14 days, often, sequestered to their basement, right, from their family. So if you talk to your employees and groups and say, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to create an event, an open operation project, and we are going to try to keep people outside a 6-foot space. And if they do have to cross those 6-foot spaces, we're going to limit that interaction for less than 10 minutes. If you do that, and then when you ask an individual who's tested positive, who were you in contact for more than 10 minutes within a 6 feet, 48 hours prior to testing, they'll often say nobody. No one gets quarantined. If you think on that backward and then work backwards, a lot of things you can do. And again, like I said, the various state governments are very supportive in helping you work through this. They're not here to tell you no, they're telling you how to do it. So for our gym, that's what we did. We spaced everything out. We made everybody wear a mask. We test for temperature coming in and exiting. We have a hand washing criteria before and after. And we consider air circulation, et cetera. And, we've had a couple of scares where we've had to turn from the door with temperature, and they've tested and negative, but so far so good. I do have clients, unfortunately, where they have had employees and individuals test positive, and then it's a shutting down and a deep cleaning, and you go back to your business.
Yeah, you've mentioned something twice that I think is sometimes missed, is the importance of air and air quality in this environment. You've mentioned air circulation more than once, and I know in a lot of buildings that is something that there's a large focus on. But I appreciate you mentioning it, because you've intentionally, or I've heard you mention it twice, and it's rarely talked about in our discussion. We talk about surfaces and the interaction with employees, but we forget about the air around us. I've got a question that I think is good, because we've got about another 5 to 7 minutes before we have to turn it over. But I thought this is a great commentary if each one of you could talk to this. The question is, it's a comment. I'm a big believer in that those of us in the meetings industry have to take the lead to show the rest of the world that it's okay to meet face to face again. The question is, how are you as panelists, our panelists, doing that within your own organizations? And I think it's a cool question, actually, but whoever wants to take it first?
I'll take that one first, Mike. So, certainly with restaurants, both by my nature and my job, I've been out to restaurants since the first day they were allowed on patios. So it's first personally going and being out and talking to everybody that we can talk to about the fact that it is safe to do these things as long as you are responsible and you do it responsibly. But then the second part is my wife and I have made a point of every weekend calling another couple, often someone who's really just taken this seriously. They've worked from home and said, hey, we're going to a restaurant, join us. And initially they'll be like, are we even allowed to do that? And then they'll think, well, if the restaurant guy's telling me that I can, then I probably can. And then about halfway through that meal, you'll just see the light bulb go off in their head that if they feel like life can begin to get back to normal. And I think that if we can make sure that people understand that if you do it right, it's freeing, and that it helps you as a person to begin to go do these things that we're now allowed to do, as long as you do them safely and carefully. And I think we all need to push that narrative.
I love it. How about Nicole? You're on mute. Nicole.
I got you. I got it.
We're learning.
I wasn't ready for me next. I had a conversation yesterday with my EVP saying I am happy to get on a plane tomorrow and host the events that I'm trying to host this fall, because I do believe they can be done. I do think they can be done safely, and I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to go to Florida right now if Miami, Palm Beach, and Fort Lauderdale allow me into their city to host these events because I think they can be done and can be done well. I've gone back to church in a group situation in that respect, and having dinner tomorrow night in Dublin with another meeting planner friend. So getting out there slowly and surely. One of my parents does have asthma, so I'm a little more cautious in some things just because I come from an Italian family and we like to do supper on Sundays. So just being a little more cautious just because of her health.
Awesome. John, how about you?
I think Michael DeRova, general manager, is also there as a Pied Piper. So being able to get the word out and to be able to say that our voices individually and collectively, to Will's point, there's a pent-up demand in our industry. I mean, for in-person meetings and events. And I feel that's part of the duty to be able to express that at every opportunity. I had the good fortune to being named to our governor here, Governor DeWine's task forces to reopen our state. From the travel and tourism side, where I led our meetings and convention kind of group, and as well as the entertainment sector. So we can safely do this. There's an opportunity for us to be able to move forward with this. I've rarely worked from home during this process, even though allowed to. Being here and being present and showing that it's okay to be in this space and how we can safely go about that, I think is key. So really just getting that message to anyone that we can get that message to, and me individually, getting on the phone, meeting face-to-face, and just showing that it's okay and we're going to be okay and we're going to be even stronger coming out of this.
Perfect. Let's go to Tom.
So, you've got to be very strong to be the first at anything. There's not everybody can be a leadoff hitter in baseball. There's certain people that adapt to it and do well. For trade shows, it's the same thing. There's going to be some groups that go first. They're going to have to be very strong. They're going to have to be determined. And of course, they're going to have to do everything right. But just like going out to the restaurants, once a few shows happen, more shows will happen. And, we've been kind of conditioned all being stuck at home. It's going to take a little bit of time before everybody's feeling relaxed. And of course, when they get a vaccine, we'll all feel way more relaxed. But in the meantime, shows are going to happen. I've got 3 groups in the fourth quarter that are all planning on going. And we're all excited and hope it happens. We'll just have to see.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go to Will.
Yeah. So for me, it's all about staying informed, staying on top of things, making sure that when you're in those conversations, whether it's with, for me, it would be leadership of our associations, right? 2 months ago, it was being confident in how we navigate having to cancel a meeting, right? And they then take that trust in you. And so for us, it's about staying informed. It's about doing our homework. And I think it was said earlier, it's about partnerships and relationships within the industry, right? It's about understanding what our partners at the CVB and the hotel convention center are doing, and being transparent with one another, and then showing confidence to those who may be looking to us for an answer. And we're not going to have all the answers, but a lot of it's just how we're getting out there. We know what we're talking about. And and to Tom's point, just taking that first step out, it can be hard, but whoever posed the question, it's a great point. If the travel and the hospitality industry can step out and say, we're ready to get back to work, we're ready to get back to where we were, we can certainly take a leadership role in that.
Yeah, I thought it was great as well. Rebecca.
I'm looking at it in a couple different ways. First, anybody that's currently our clients, whether it's corporate business travel or maybe some meetings that are scheduled for later in the year, just proactively reaching out to those contacts and just talking through what are we doing from a cleanliness standpoint, or how are we doing the social distancing for a meeting, so that way they've got their meeting set the way that they want them to do. And sometimes it's a matter of putting them in a bigger room so we can make that happen. But the second is, we're part of the IHG group, and our parent company has done a lot of good things from a social media aspect, whether it's videos or just signage that they're doing. So we push some of those things out through our different platforms with that, just to help get the message out there and try to reach those that, you know, maybe they're still a little nervous to venture out. And like it's been said, like we've been so conditioned to be at home, but maybe they just need a nudge that it is safe to go out and we're ready for you when you're ready to travel.
I would agree. Awesome. Sam, anything to add here?
Right. There's those three questions. Can we do it? How do we do it? And will they come? And for the will they come, our experience with working for a diverse group of industries is you need to, you know, pull out your governor's orders for your respective states, look at them, make up a plan. But here's the part that's really critical. You also have to tell everybody and show everybody that's what you're doing. If you advertise, and we see the best way to do it is by signage, having that COVID sign on the door, these are our rules, you know, whether it's an ice cream shop, a restaurant, or an event, and you explain that plan, you have it on your website, you show people that you're taking it seriously, and this is how we're doing it, they come. And it's that plan showing that you're following the rules is what really dispels people's fears. Look, everybody has, there is a small group of people that are willing to take unreasonable risks. There's a large group of people that are willing to take reasonable risks. And then there is a small group of people that can take no risk at all, right? So we're really going to be focusing on that large population that can take reasonable risks and creating plans to keep them safe within reason based on the governor's orders. And if you do those things, I've seen plans from event hosting, which has to do with people walking in a corridor, keeping moving, certain distancing, and then kind of breaking off like a highway into event tables with plexiglass. And those things seem to be working really well. Of course, we're running out of plexiglass right now. But yeah, if you keep those things in mind and you know, take the rules seriously and then show people that you're taking it seriously, I think you're going to be very successful in whatever you do.
I would agree with that. And I'm going to ask Dan to bring that question home.
Of course. You know, last thing I'll say, and, you know, everyone had phenomenal points, but I will just say that it comes down to listening. I mean, listening to those customers and understanding what makes them feel comfortable, what will make them feel comfortable in traveling and being face to face again, and making sure that our destination can provide that. But Nicole, also be on the next thing smoking. If there is a plane going to Miami, I'm there. And, you know, also just making sure that we're supporting our industry as a whole. I mean, the next industry show, making sure that we're there showing our support. And I think that's something we need to do.
Yeah, and I would encourage it for everybody that's part of this and listening to us. I've traveled 3 consecutive weeks, and I've done it to go through 3 different airlines. I've now visited 7 different airports, including coming back from where I was. One of them was international to Mexico. And I've done it because I am explaining and showing people what the experience actually looks like. Literally on some of it, we broadcasted in while we've had planner, and it's made all the difference in the world because the planners are asking you, what is the TSA experience? Well, it's great if you read it. It's different if you can talk to it. And I would encourage everybody, when we're asking, what can we do on our part? Go travel. Even if it's a one-day trip, get on a plane, go through TSA, wear the mask, do what you need to be doing to show everybody, yeah, I did it, and I can tell you what the experience felt like. I can tell you what it looked like. I've been to 7 of our different hotel properties in the last 3 weeks, and it's that. I leave on a plane tomorrow for Phoenix to do it again. I'm doing one-day trips every week, staying overnight at one of our properties, going through different airports, intentionally taking different airlines. And I'm trying to hit different airports to see, is the TSA experience different at a different airport than somewhere else? And candidly, they've all been the same. But I cannot tell you enough. People are asking us, they want to see it. And for all of you in the business, I would also highly recommend filming. can you video quickly? And it doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to be polished. It just has to be, show me what it looks like. You're talking about 6 feet of separation in a meeting room. If you've said it, can you show it to me visibly? That is what we've heard consistently. So when everybody, that I thought it was a brilliant question about what can you do? Travel. And I think Todd will be excited. I've gone to a restaurant every weekend since the moment we've opened. And every night we've gone, and it's to support our local businesses and making sure that we're talking the talk and walking the walk to say it was safe, it was easy, it was comfortable, and it was enjoyable of all things. And I think those are the things we could do, but document it, talk about it. It's not that we're not doing it, we're just not getting it out there fast enough to let people know that the world's kind of open for business. There was one other question, and I don't know, I'll throw it up for anyone who wants to answer it, but there's a question, are you surprised at how other states are handling the COVID experience versus your home state of Ohio? Personally, I'm just like, everything's kind of localized in nature, just like it is within your own state, but I'll leave it up to anybody who wants to answer that. Nobody?
Yes. No. I'll say, I mean, in my standpoint, working for a management company that's in all, it's definitely surprising to see a counterpart in Missouri told me about a 7,000 person event he had last weekend. And the state of Indiana, after July 4, you can have any event, any size, coming at that point. I think it's about 500 or 1,000 people now, and quickly going to any number after the 4th of July. So definitely very surprising how some of the states are handled, and some that were further out, you see kind of the cases spiking up now. So yeah, everything's local at some level, but it's definitely surprising about kind of the inconsistency among the entire, kind of the country.
Well, we're definitely at the hour. I'm going to turn it back to Haley, but I just wanted to say thank you for the conversation on a lot of complexity. It's the best way I explained it to people. It's complex because there are a lot of regulations that are moving. But it's something that I think Samuel said it so well, is if you want to meet, you can meet. And I think that's the best and most positive message that can come out of this, that it is there if you want to do it. And you have an army of people, as you can see, ready to make it happen. So thank you for the time, guys. Thank you for the conversation. And Haley, it's back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate it. I did want to tackle one Ohio specific question that came up in the Q&A. We had someone ask, let me just make sure I have it verbatim here, about doing tables of 10 and what the Ohio operating requirement is. The question says, how many attendees can now be seated at a round table that would normally accommodate 10? I can't see who asked that question. A lot of our hoteliers are receiving this information from OHLA, but I know we have a lot of planners who don't receive that. So I wanted to take a moment to clarify that. For this specific question, the Responsible Restart Ohio operating requirements state that you can have no more than 10 people per table. The 6-foot spacing within a party is not how the rule functions. So you can have up to 10 people at a table, but we would suggest that you consider having 6 or 8 people at a table to demonstrate that you are making an attempt to put more space in. I will get some specific verbiage on this and have it sent out with a follow-up notes. This question comes up a lot because it is a little bit confusing. So we can definitely send that out so you have those materials to share with your team and to share with, for planners, your clients who are planning in Ohio. So I did want to clarify that for the question that came in, and I will provide some follow-up information on that.
Haley, I'll echo that because I've taken a lot of questions from caterers specifically about that. And you can have 10 people at a table of 10. Anything you choose to do beyond that would be specifically because you chose to do it for consumer confidence or because your guests wanted that. But you can have tables of 10. They do not necessarily have to be all of the same family. They just have to understand that they're sitting together, at that table.
Yeah, and if I could add another layer to it, we talk about pods. There are groups of individuals, we all have them ourselves, where we are working together, talking together, living together. And those pods all know that if one of us gets sick, probably we're going to infect each other. So, when those pods go out to do events, we are seeing that a lot of departments of health are allowing flexibility on that if they are a cohesive group that are, staying safe within that. So we've been getting those questions too. I've been telling people, look, allow some flexibility. There is some flexibility if, you don't want to have a family of 11 and them to have to leave one sibling behind if they're doing an event, and it gets really awkward to have them stay at a table by themselves. So we are seeing that the entities who are regulating are allowing some flexibility.
Perfect. Thank you both. I did also want to reiterate that if anyone has any questions about that, and you aren't a member of OHLA, still feel free to reach out and ask. Your hotel contacts should have that information, but we kind of joke within the office how many calls we now get from mothers of the bride trying to understand what rules they have to follow. And we're happy to take planners' questions as well. Or anyone that has one that they'd like clarified. We're doing a lot of work on that and happy to help. Also, someone did point out to clarify the max in Ohio is 300 attendees per facility. So in a catering or banquet facility. So in our hotels, you do have to be mindful, especially when you have multiple ballrooms, perhaps. That's not 300 attendees per ballroom. That's 300 attendees meeting in your banquet and catering space that has an F&B component. So there are a lot of nuances. So really, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I think that we've tackled all of the questions here at this point. Feel free to submit if you have anything else that we can provide some information and follow up. I wanted to thank our panelists and also our moderator, Mike, for taking us through a thought-provoking and real conversation about how the meetings industry can grow up and out from the COVID pandemic. Thanks to our audience for coming along for a virtual ride that was a bit of an educational experiment. In my personal experience, I think this is the best audience to test, different types of meetings on, because you can make it even better. So with that, I thank you. And a special thanks to Sam with Fisher Phillips, and again to our sponsor, Mac Productions. And we look forward to your feedback on this event through a post-event survey. As OHLA pushes forward with our own hybrid annual conference and gala in November, and other industry associations prepare to relaunch in-person events, we really, really hope to see you in person soon. Thank you.